regards to the A spectrum, I'm asexual. In regards to the romantic side, I am pan-romantic.
Asexual and biromantic.
Asexual.
Demisexual or grey sexual.
Demi-romantic.
Pan-romantic asexual.
I realised I was asexual when I was about 16 after seeing a post on Tumblr.
I felt that I always kind of felt the way I did, but I never really truly accepted it or came to the realisation about it or found a term for it until recently, because of sort of very diverse community that there is at the university, and beforehand sort of societal pressure, sort of peer pressure had stopped me from truly accepting who I was.
I was chatting to some of my friends and I just kind of came up in conversation saying, I don't really understand why everything's so hypersexualized, why in music videos people are constantly talking about sex. Just didn't get it, didn't really appeal to me.
I've always sort of known that I was maybe a little bit different, but it wasn't until maybe a year and a half ago that I started using the internet more, especially sites like Tumblr, where I realised that there were lots of people that felt exactly the same way as me, and I wasn't broken, there wasn't something wrong with me.
About the age of 17, I found out what the word asexual meant and thought, and that's me, I've never really thought about anyone in that way. And then I met my boyfriend when I was 18, and I kind of realised that I quite like his face. So it was a bit confusing to me as where I belonged, because I'd always been asexual, but then I found out what demisexual meant, and it was a lot easier for me to understand.
For a long time I mixed up the concepts of gender identity and sexual identity, and because I don't take part in stereotypical female activities, and I don't dress in a stereotypically female way, I study a very male-dominated subject, I kind of thought that meant that sexually I was possibly a lesbian, but then realised that sexuality and gender identity are independent.
The biggest difficulty is people not understanding what asexuality is, and you having to, go through the whole explanation.
Before I'd even come to the realisation that I already was asexual, seeing it talked about or mentioned in the media, I would hear sort of sometimes friends or my parents making comments about it, saying that they didn't quite understand it, and that put a lot of pressure on me and the anxiety of wondering I may have to come out to them eventually.
No one knew what on earth I was talking about, so once I kind of got around the vocab lesson, people were much more accepting.
Not a lot of people have heard of it, so they don't have the stigma behind it, and so you're free to kind of explain it, what it means to you in your own words.
One of the problems is there's just not that much awareness, and people, particularly kind of the older generation, like parents, grandparents and so on, just don't know what it is. So kind of my difficulty in coming out was I'd say, I'm asexual, and my dad would assume I was a plant, but that wasn't what I was talking about.
Don't feel like you have to figure it out straight away, and don't feel like you have to tell anyone. You can take as long as you like to work it out, and you can choose whichever labels feel right. It doesn't matter if later on you want to change those labels.
Sexuality is a very fluid thing, and not everyone actually stays the same way all the time. So you don't have to be so quick to find a label. You take your time, find what's best suits you.
The one thing you'll hear a lot is it's all a phase. You just go through a phase, you'll change, you'll find someone, you'll be normal again.
What you're feeling is probably normal, and that there are probably thousands of people who feel the same thing. Just because a certain sexuality or identity doesn't get all the airtime that being heterosexual does. So if you don't see asexual characters on TV or in books, it doesn't mean that they don't exist.
I suppose there's not just straight and there's not just gay and bisexual, there are things in between.
UEA is ace.
UEA is ace.
UEA is really ace.
UEA is 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 ace.